Welcome to another episode of the Influential Experts Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Hicks, and today we are speaking with personal injury attorney Henry Queener, discussing his expert insights into auto accident claims and compensation. Henry Queener is a dedicated car wreck attorney renowned for his skilled negotiation and tenacious litigation. Recognized as one of the top 100 trial lawyers nationally, Queener has successfully represented car accident victims across Kentucky, Tennessee, and Colorado, securing millions of dollars in damages. His expertise in auto accident lawsuits is well regarded, with a strong focus on obtaining maximum compensation for his clients. Henry, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show.
Thank you for having me back, Bobby. Welcome to our Nashville office.
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, I love the Nashville office. Love that wood behind you. Let's go ahead and dive in. So what is my auto accident case worth? How do I determine that?
An auto accident case, what it's worth, has some components to it. Number one, what are the past medical charges? You got to go get those. Those are not going to be the bills you get in the mail for remaining balances. That's not going to be on the EOBs usually. You have to get that directly from the medical service provider, such as the radiologist, anesthesiologist, the facility, the ER doctor. That's one component, past medical charges. Next component would be future medical charges. Are you going to need medical care in the future? What is that medical care? And what's the anticipated charge amount for that medical care? What assistive devices are you going to need? Some people need a walker or cane for a period of time. Other people need their entire house retrofitted because they are permanently not going to be able to do anything outside of a wheelchair. And the last component that you usually have is a pain and suffering component to most car wreck cases. There are others, but those are your big ones: past medical charges, future medical charges, and pain and suffering.
Certainly. So when you're putting together, what do you call it, a demand package? When you're
Absolutely.
putting together a demand package and you're coming to a figure like, this is a figure that we feel like is, worthy of our clients, the compensation that we're seeking. Those are all the factors that go into it, right?
Yes. Another one I did not mention is lost wages. You may have had wages that's in the past, and you may have lost future earning capacity in the future. There is another element I can think of that would be household services. You may have had to hire someone to do things you normally did around the house, like say mow the yard or tend to parts of your house. And those can be claimed sometimes too.
Is there any sort of formula to help you sort of come up with that figure?
I wouldn't say there's a set formula. On the internet, you will often see people talk about 3 times this number, or 2.5 times that number. That is not really constructive. That you have to look at each case individually. And the parts you look at to start with: past medical charges, future medical charges, lost wages, lost future earning capacity. Once you have those big 4, you can see what kind of dollar figure you come to. But then you need to look at the medical records and medical opinions to see how is your injury going to affect your life in the future, and how does it affect your activities of daily living. I mean, are your injuries so severe they get in the way of just taking a shower? Well, that's a big deal, and so you have to look at those medical records to next figure out what is the pain and suffering component here, and get opinions from medical doctors about that.
Mm-hmm. How do insurance adjusters operate in auto accident claims? What part do they play?
Well, first, let's break that word auto accident adjuster apart. You have the pre-litigation adjuster, and then before that, you even have that initial adjuster you talk to, is just gathering information. The insurance company takes the position of adjuster and they break it apart into levels of adjusters. So the first adjuster you talk to isn't going to be the first adjuster I talk to. The first adjuster you talk to isn't going to know anything about past medical charges, future medical charges, lost wages, lost future earning capacity. The first adjuster you talk to is going to have no information other than a police report, maybe. They won't have any of your medical records. And by the way, that set of paperwork you were given when you walked out of the emergency department, those are not your medical records. Those are discharge instructions. You got to go back to the hospital records department to get a copy of your medical records. So that first adjuster you talk to knows nothing. And so if they do, in those first conversations with that first person, offer you money, it's money based on nothing. That is just
Yeah.
a amount of money they will pay to close that file at that point in process that has nothing to do with you and your claims. The first adjuster I talk to is the person I need to get information to, the information we've been talking about, medical records, medical charges, lost wage documentation from your employer. Your word or my word won't do it. And a future earning capacity number, if it applies in your case, from a vocational economist. That's what the adjuster I'm interacting with is looking for, because they have to have a foundation for every number I give them. And then the last number, that pain and suffering number, is the number that I have to convince them of based on your medical records and your medical charts.
Yeah. Obviously, um, it's in the insurance company's best interest to collect as much premiums as they can and pay as little out as they can as well. And so, that's the nature of their business. What tactics do insurance adjusters use to try to get me to settle quickly?
Well, first tactic is just that first adjuster you talk to. How about $1,500? I'll send you a check, $1,500 right now. All you got to do, okay, $2,000. They just start throwing these numbers at you, and stop. These numbers aren't based on your case. They have no information, and you have to realize that initially, that these numbers they're offering you have nothing to do with your case, and so that's just the baseline for any claim they throw out there. Tactics they use, number one, they'll use a tactic that I call string you out. They'll give you a shopping list of things they tell you they need you to go get. They'll tell you that they need you to go get the police report, like they can't do that themselves, or they need for you to go get proof of this or that, anything to string you along. Because in Tennessee, for example, it's a 1 year statute of limitations. If they can just get you strung out for 1 year, then that 1 year comes and goes. They'll stop returning your phone call because your case is now forever going to be a zero.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's one tactic, the string you out tactic. The next tactic is just make you an offer of any, whatever they, those low numbers to get you just to settle immediately. Uh, Another tactic would be that they tell you things like, don't worry, we'll take care of your medical bills later. This is just the money that we're offering to you. That's absolutely not true. You are responsible for your medical bills, and you have to deal with either your health insurance about that. You have to get money out of this auto insurance carrier to pay your medical bills, but sometimes adjusters will tell you, don't worry about your medical bills. We'll pay those later, or we'll pay those. On top of this money we're offering you, we'll pay those medical bills directly. That's a tactic they'll use that is just not true. They don't, once you take the money, their responsibility for anything ends, and they walk away, and you're the one left responsible for your medical bills and remaining balances you might have, if any.
Yeah. You know, uh, I know there's a lot of different factors that influence the size of an injury settlement offer. What from your experience are the key factors that determine that?
The first things you start with are those past medical charges. And depending upon what medical care you received in an emergency department, you can get very different medical charge numbers. So, two people can be in one car wreck, both go to the same emergency department, but not get the same care. And so, step one is figuring out what was your care, not what was someone else's care. What's the regular care? Everyone gets a different level of care that has to do with what problems they're presenting to the emergency department with. And step one is what was your medical care, and then the collecting of the rest of those, what we call economic damages, the damages we can put a precise number on, is step one in figuring out what your case is worth. And the next step, like I said before, is collecting those medical records and bills so that we can see what are the medical providers talking about when it comes to your pain and suffering. The number one thing people I think get goofed up on is they think that they can just say things, or they can themselves explain things to the adjuster, and that their case will be based on that. And it's not. It's based on what you can collect and get other people to say, such as your employer. What will your employer say about your lost wages? Or what will a doctor say about your need for future medical care?
Yeah. You briefly touched on this in an earlier question, but I kind of want you to unpack it a little bit more. How is pain and suffering quantified in an auto accident settlement? I mean, you can get a settlement, but you could still, endure a lot of pain and suffering, for the rest of your life. I mean, how do you quantify that?
It's funny. In workers' comp, they try to set up mathematical formulas for impairment ratings and industrial disability ratings, they sometimes call them. And they're trying to quantify something that can't really be quantified. Where we over here in the automobile wreck industry world, an area of law, we embrace that you cannot, with mathematical certain precision, quantify pain and suffering. And so you've got to, as the attorney, gather those medical records and those medical opinions that you can paint a picture for the adjuster of what the person's pain and suffering is. And also, you can talk to people's loved ones and family members and spouses about what a day in the life for them looks like to help paint that picture of what their pain and suffering is for the adjuster. It is not simply just the person who's suffering to tell the adjuster about it. It's about collecting information from both experts, the medical professionals, and loved ones to paint this entire picture and explain to the adjuster why this level of suffering, this level of change in a person's ability to get through life on a daily basis has value, and that value needs to be recognized.
There's a famous case where a woman spilt coffee on her at a drive-through at McDonald's, and she got like $30 million from McDonald's for that. Do you remember that case? Are you familiar with it?
I'm not. I've heard the legend. I mean, I assume at the bottom of the legend there's an actual case down there somewhere, but no, I'm not familiar with it.
But how is that possible? I mean, how did they come up with that kind of number?
You know, I don't. I can only imagine and guess and speculate about what was going on there. I mean, I can think that burns are extremely painful, especially if you pour an extremely hot liquid over your groin area. That's a very sensitive area and can do a lot of damage that can be very life altering. Also, you don't know on the other end of the equation what the people handing her that, I'll assume, very hot liquid knew about the very hot liquid and knew how hot it was and how many complaints they had in the past about, you've got to stop handing out the coffee that hot. You're hurting people. How many people had they hurt in the past before they handed out the coffee like that? So, number one, how massively it might have affected someone's life. And then on the other side, was there a punishment component to it that we call punitive damages? Some states call that exemplary damages because the seller of the coffee, had just been warned repeatedly and hurt numerous people and just wouldn't stop handing people an excessively hot liquid. So
Mm-hmm.
my guess would be somewhere in there is what was driving a number like that.
So the punitive damages, is that something that the judge or the jury, or how is that figured out?
Punitive damages are if you meet certain requirements, you can then ask a jury for it could be a jury or it could be a judge for punitive damages. And those are not damages to make up for the harm you've suffered and the loss of enjoyment of life you're suffering and how your injuries are affecting your ability to get through life on a daily basis. Punitive damages are not about that. They're about punishing wrongful conduct of the person who hurt you because generally their conduct was just so horrible and so over the top and they so should have known better that they need to be punished for it. So that's, you don't often see punitive damages, are extremely rare. Most often you'll see them with a drunk driving case. So if you have someone who's a drunk driver, you'll often see juries ask for punitive damages because it's so obvious you shouldn't drive drunk, you could hurt yourself and others. But that's punitive damages. Don't see them much. Usually it's with drunk drivers most commonly.
Yeah. How can hiring a personal injury impact my case?
Well, it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, the initial adjuster you talk to is just going to make whatever offer it closes the file, just the administrative expense offer. You hire a law firm that does a thorough job like we do here at Queener Law, and we're going to collect all the documentation and information that will solidly support an offer, and the offer will be based on your case, what you've been through, the treatment you've had, the lost wages you've experienced, your lost ability to earn money in the future. Your offers will be built on those things, not just some offer that's the administrative cost of closing a file.
Mm-hmm. Could you unpack some more of the advantages of hiring your law firm to represent someone who's been in an auto accident?
Absolutely. We do a great deal of this work. We have interacted with all the insurance companies you see on television. We understand what it is they place value on when they're trying to make an offer on a car accident case. We understand what documentation they want to see to make a good offer that's going to fully reflect the value of your case. We understand getting those medical records, where to get them. We understand what medical charges are, and we understand about getting line itemized charges with the correct coding on them so that the insurance company will count all those medical charges. We understand when it comes to lost wages, us just saying it or putting it on our letterhead is not going to cut it. We understand that we have to go to your employer. We have to get on your employer's letterhead. So we know what these insurance companies are looking for and what these insurance companies consider what they call value drivers. And we gather that information and present that to the insurance company. And then on top of that, the insurance company knows that if they don't make an offer that is where we think it should be, we will file a lawsuit. We file lawsuits. And that's important because the insurance company knows we're not going to take a bad offer. If we need to, we will file the lawsuit.
Yeah. Well, Henry, I want to be very respectful of your time. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on today's episode of the Influential Experts podcast and sharing your invaluable insights on car wrecks and how attorneys such as yourself can help have a positive impact on these victims. For our listeners, we hope you found this discussion informative and insightful. And if you did, please let us know by liking, commenting, and sharing this episode with others. And if you live in Colorado, Kentucky, or Tennessee, and you've been injured in an accident, you need representation, visit queenerlaw.com to schedule your free consultation with a personal injury attorney today. Thanks for watching and have a great day.